All right, I decided I'm gonna make everybody hungry first to start off. So I'm doing Moroccan cuisine. So Moroccan cuisine has a lot of influences. First you have the Berbers, which came into Morocco thousands of years ago. They were mainly like sustenance, based on sustenance. They didn't have anything too fancy. I think for those of us who have the Berber pizza, just sort of like a calzone, it was pretty basic. It was like meat and potatoes and some other things, maybe some spices. But one thing that they did was they took a lot of local ingredients and they'd mix it all in a big pot to create a good blend of flavors. Then the Arabs came in about 600, I think, AD. And they brought in a lot of spices from all over the world, Southeast Asia, India, and also, I think, popularized the use of spices that were native to Morocco, I think like cinnamon. They also brought in nuts and dried fruit, and that help to create the sort of sweet and sour sort of taste that is in a lot of Moroccan food today. Then we have the Moors, which came in from Spain, and they really popularized the production of olives and olive oil, and they also popularized citrus gardens and fruit trees. After that, the Ottomans,
Keep going.
the Ottomans came in and they brought grills and barbecues, kebabs, a lot of like different meats and grilling, grilled meats. And then the French most recently brought in cafes, wine, ice cream, and patisseries. So with cafes, we saw a lot of cafes there, a lot of men hanging out there just nursing one cup of coffee. And for wine, I noticed I couldn't find a lot of people who actually drank wine or even sold it. Most of the drinks were like non-alcoholic. But I have read a lot that they are producing a lot of wine, mainly for other countries' consumption. So I thought I'd talk about some of the more popular or most well-known types of foods and drinks. So the mint tea is actually sort of a Chinese, it's like your average Chinese gunpowder tea mixed in, and then they add mint leaves. It's offered to guests as a sign of hospitality, and is really drinking all the time, not just with meals. It's just, you can drink it all day, every day. It's called Moroccan whiskey, as we know. And something I found out, which I was curious when we were in Morocco, I'd always see people serving this tea and pouring it high off. We've got red wine showing off, making it fancy. And the reason they do that is to create bubbles or foam. I don't know what that does to the tea itself, but apparently they like it. And it's also really, really sweet. Depending on who's serving it, you can add in sugar if you want. I think for us they did that because we're foreigners. They just gave us the sugar and we were allowed to add in as much as we wanted, but they usually have it in anyway for the average Moroccan. So couscous. Couscous is made using the hard part of the grain that hasn't been ground by the mill. And that's then mixed with water and rolled into pellets. Then they put it in a sieve, and anything that's small enough to go through the sieve is taken, mixed with water, added to flour, ground up, or not ground up, rolled up into pellets, and they just continue that process until everything is used up. This was used by the Berbers as early as the 7th century, and it's usually served with vegetables and meat. But I thought this sounded good. It can also be mixed with almond, cinnamon, and, what does that say, sugar, to form the dessert souf, which, it just sounds really good. And it's traditionally eaten on Fridays. So the tagine, I think we're all pretty familiar with tagines. These date to the late 8th century. I have found multiple sources like that kind of debate on how it originated. Some people say it was a Berber invention, but it's also been found in other Arab countries, so it's believed to have been brought over from, the areas like Saudi Arabia and Iran to Morocco. And it varies depending on what country it's in. I believe in either like Algeria or Tunisia, it's sort of like a tagine is more like a frittata. It's like egg and yeah, it looked good. But in Morocco, tagines are slow-cooked stews, and they can be made with pretty much anything. You've got meat like lamb and beef, chicken, pigeon, fish, and vegetables. Usually they'll add in vegetables to the meat, or you can just have your own vegetable tagine. You can also add dates, which sort of creates that sweet and sour combination that I mentioned before. And how they work is that the cone or dome-shaped top traps moisture so it can't escape, and it's really good for countries like Morocco where there might not be a lot of water available. It's sort of like a Dutch oven. Now pastilla, I thought about making it honestly, but apparently you can't get orange blossom water at Meijer, so I gotta find it somewhere else. Pastillas are made with worka pastry, and worka means leaf, so it's very thin. It's actually thinner than phyllo dough, which I was surprised. I didn't think that was even possible. But it begins as a spongy dough, and then it's sort of thrown and slapped and tossed against this sort of convex metal thing called a tubshill. And that is set over a charcoal brazier, which keeps it hot. And so then they cook it, keep it there. Then for the filling, they traditionally uses pigeon, but since the specific kind of pigeon they use for it is rare, it's mainly used with shredded chicken. And then, so you wrap it up in the pastry, cover it in powdered sugar and cinnamon, and enjoy. God, I was salivating just doing this whole presentation.
Looks like you have one of your GIFs in there.
Yeah, this, I took that. That lady got very angry at me when I didn't give her money. But, okay, and the pastilla also has Andalusian origins, which Andalusia is a southern, like the southernmost region of Spain. Now the spices, I found that there were like 10 main spices used in Morocco. Of course there are more, but these are like the biggest ones. So you have cayenne, which is used to give like, a spicy hot flavor. And then cumin, cinnamon, turmeric, ginger, paprika, and black pepper are all used in tagines. Sometimes they're used together, sometimes they're used maybe specifically for one tagine. I know paprika is used for vegetable tagines especially. And then cinnamon and saffron, and I think also aniseed are used in desserts. And coriander is also called fennel, and it's used in like bread and stew. Now, eating habits. This is my main wordy slide. So the biggest thing is you wash your hands before you eat. They have like a jug and a bowl of water that you can pour water over your hands and rinse them off. And for when you take food, you don't use a utensil. You use your fingers. Primarily the thumb and the first two fingers. It's considered rude to use the other two. You can also use bread to sort of scoop up the food or soak up any juices. And you should definitely only use the right hand, I think, because the left hand is used for washing. and so it's dirty. You can't use the left hand to hold bread, though. All meals are eaten at home, so children will go home for lunch. People will come home from work for lunch. They all eat dinner and breakfast at home. I remember Radwan said that restaurants were for foreigners and other Moroccans who were away from home. So lunch is the primary meal. Breakfast, they usually have bread, a lot of bread. There's bread with every meal. And dinner is leftovers from lunch. Something else I learned while we were at our homestay was only the head of the household is allowed to break meat in the tagine, because I had my fingers in there and I was trying to break pieces off of this chicken, and the guy, although it wasn't a Moroccan, it was the other American guy at the homestay, told me that.
Andrew's friend.
Yeah, Andrew's best friend. Now the bread, most Moroccans don't have ovens in their home. They just they make bread, take it to a communal oven, and it's baked, and they take it home. Even if you do have an oven, like sometimes they aren't even used. So like I said, bread is served with every meal, and it's distributed evenly. I noticed that when we were all eating together, we just kind of grabbed bread whenever we wanted it, but apparently they allot it out for everyone to make sure there aren't any arguments. And it shouldn't be wasted, you shouldn't throw it away, and leftovers they usually give to the poor or animals. Oh, there are my sources. I went by a lot faster than I was expecting.
So I did my presentation on the Medina and the Ville Nouvelle and how they're just two completely different, almost I wouldn't say societies, but they're just completely different lifestyles and how that kind of came to be. So the Medina has a lot of safety values to the city structure itself. It's unique in protecting the people. There is a wall built around the whole Medina that's used to protect for attackers and invaders, for invasions. And it's created like a maze, which we all know from Marrakesh and getting lost and trying to find our way back. They did that to confuse people. So if they were under attack, they could run and know where they were going, but they would get lost. And a big part of the maze-like structure is the quarters that you have. And the quarters you can close off. And they're closed off to stop people from being able to go into that. And they can defend themselves for that. A big modern thing that's happening now, especially with Medina's, cars aren't allowed in there. The streets are too narrow, it's dangerous for that, but then also with the amount of people walking around, it's really dangerous as well. But there are carts and donkeys that are in there moving things around, which can be dangerous as well, because I got whipped in by the tail of a donkey. That was a little, stung for a few seconds. And the Medinas have elements, and every Medina has these elements. You've got your mosque, a fountain, a bakery, a hammam, and then the mosque Quranic school. We saw all of these elements while we were walking around, but I'll explain them a little bit more. So the mosque is very important. It's where people go to pray. They have the call to prayer 5 times a day. And from what we saw, each quarter has their own, and when we went up to some of the places to look at kind of the skyline of the city, we could see each mosque for each different quarter, which I thought was very interesting. They're like neighborhoods, and that's their quarter's mosque. And the quarters didn't look very big. They're very close together, but each one has their own separate mosque. The fountains are a huge importance. That's how the people got their water. They did their laundry there. They get their drinking water. They, can wash their hands if they're outside and working. The animals can drink from the fountain, and they're also very beautiful. The bakery, it's a community bakery, and so the women make their bread or pizza or anything that they need to be cooked, and it's brought down to the oven. And when we were in Chef Shawan, there's just this huge pile of just scrap wood and everything from doors to window frames that people drop off to use in the oven to bake their bread every day, which I thought was really interesting. The hammam, it's traditionally Turkish, and
That's a fancy hammam, right?
it is.
That is not your everyday hammam.
I tried finding an everyday hammam, but this is what Google Images brought to me. I figured it wasn't like this, but
The one I went and looked,
no. I saw one on Google Images of someone getting like a massage in a hammam, and I thought of you.
Oh my God.
So, and then I was like, no, I won't do that. But so the hammam is a community shower bath area. Not everyone had showers, and that's where everyone went to go and do that. It's very interesting. They put water into it, and they kind of steam it up to make it nice and warm, because cold showers are never fun.
There's the cold splash of the hammam. There's
Yeah.
the hot steam, and then there's this
Mm-hmm.
basin with freezing cold water that this 16-year-old had such a fun time getting their little bucket and throwing it on me.
That would have been really funny to see. And then the Mosque Quranic School. These were where kids went to learn about the Quran and Allah, and we went and saw one. And the dorms are really cool, and every Medina has one where kids go and learn. The placement of the Medinas is really important. It was always near water because water gave people life. You need water to survive. And in Chef Shawan, we saw why that was also important, because they had their kind of laundromat set up where, they were washing everything in the river. They had their rugs, they had their clothes, and they need that river to be able to do things like that. So the Ville Nouvelle it was created by the French when they occupied Morocco, and they were created because the French kind of wanted to have their own. They didn't want to adapt to Moroccan culture. They wanted to know what they were used to. And I think the most striking places I saw this was in Marrakesh and Rabat. We were walking around and we were going down those huge boulevards. I felt almost like we were in California for a second. And all of a sudden, you just cross the street and you're in a whole different world. And you're just like, what's happened? I walk through this wall and everything has changed. So I think that that's just really interesting. And it's very modern. The Ville Nouvelle is modern. I mean, you can find your, McDonald's, KFC, shopping malls, nightclubs. I mean, there's just such a distinct change, which I saw a lot in Marrakesh, more so than anywhere else. I just think it's really interesting that they have nightclubs as well out there, because they don't drink, so it's just very modern compared to the Medina.
You can see all the influences that people that have come through, so they have all these it's sort of a contradiction in terms.
Because even the architecture, when you kind of look at that, it's some of it's very similar, but it's not similar at the same time. So you have stores like shopping malls like this, and then you go into the Medina, and it's those tight little quarters where you're bartering for things. It's not a set price. So they're just two completely different things. It's almost like you're going back in time when you step into the Medina, which I really enjoyed. You're just you're so out of your comfort zone and out of your element, and you just kind of are trying to figure everything out, and you're just like, this is how they used to do it, and I don't have a set price anymore, and I'm just kind of wandering around in this maze, and it's a lot of fun. So, and that is it.
So I did Moroccan artisans and crafts and craftsmen. I had a broader topic at first, but my presentation was getting extensive, so I had to chop it down a little bit. But this is in Marrakesh at Jamal Fana Square. Okay. So the culture around craftsmen, so in the US, we have this kind of notion that like if you're good at a bunch of things, that's like really good. People like want to be good at like many, many things. But in Morocco, they have a more like specialized skill set that they want. So a lot of people, even if they can afford to go to school but don't want to, they prefer to do like apprenticeships for a really long time and learn to be highly skilled in one craft. So it could be like pottery or tile work. And when they do master this skill, it can provide for them for a lifetime and with a family and everything. So in some ways, like this lifestyle is more desired than going to school and becoming like a doctor or like a businessman. Okay. So one of the first ones is carpets and rugs. So the weaving of carpets in Morocco is a very important tradition, and many women have done it for a really long time, and not only just for like your home, but also as dowry. And carpets and rugs come in a vast variety, and there are over 45 styles, and they differ from tribe to tribe. So like there's the Berber tribe, and which when we went to the rug, starts with a C? Co-op, thank you. We went to the rug co-op. You could see like very differently how the colors were different and like the styles of weaving. Did you bought a Berber rug? Yeah, so it was very different from the one I bought. So some different styles. Beni Orain is like a white fluffy rug, and there's like a black zigzag or line through it. I feel like those are really popular now, especially like if you go on Pinterest. You can see them all over, and like they're really popular in interior design.
That's the one you got behind the loom to do.
Yeah, and I have a picture coming up of that one. And then there's a Rabati rug, which is considered one of the finer carpets with a Turkish influence, and they're very ornate with borders and interiors, and they're usually like the higher price range. So when I was doing research, they were like, you shouldn't pay more than this unless you're buying this, and the Rabati was one of them. So yeah, don't listen to those. But another one is a Zanafi, and it's a newer type of rug, and it's usually very colorful, and they have like a river kind of like flowing style. They're not like, they're ornate in the sense that they're colorful, and the weave is like very flowy, but it's just not as like technical looking as some of the other ones. Another one is a Beni McGild, and the common color is red, and there's usually like an ornate centerpiece and border, and that can be like usually a diamond shape in the center. So here are some pictures. So this is the rug that was on the loom when we first walked into the co-op, and this would be that Beni Orain rug. So it's white, and it's usually longer in wool, and then there's the black design. So this is actually like the top of the rug, so what would be you'd be stepping on, and it's like a higher pile, and then that's the back of the rug. That's Julia and I weaving on the rug. We were invited back there, and we thought we were really special, and then when we left, she said, give me coin. So we had to pay for that experience, but that was fine. It was really fun. And then that's the picture. It's actually the rug I bought that's hanging over my balcony, but that's just like another style. That was, I think they said, a little more of like a newer style and modern, so I was like in a haze and very excited when I was shopping, so I do not remember what the style was called, but yeah. But it's a newer one, so, but it's really, really special, something I'll have forever. So
for those who don't know, Fallon tried
I tried everything, not because I necessarily wanted to, but I just wanted the pictures for my presentation. This was really fun, slightly uncomfortable. But so pottery is another little craftsmanship thing. But just like rugs, Morocco has a long history of pottery, especially in Fez. So a lot of like the co-ops we visited were in Fez. So this was in Fez, and before I got up there, this man made a tagine and a candlestick, and then I don't know what I made, but yeah. So a lot of times they're painted with blue and yellow and green, and there's usually like a geometric design, and then it's adorned with florals, and the florals are kind of like, they were kind of brought over with the French, and it's like a more European influence. So they can make bowls, plates, mugs, vases, and tagines. But yeah, there's like so many endless things you can make with clay. I bought my sister like a Fatima hand. I was gonna bring it, but she took it to Ohio. So yeah, and what was different about this pottery wheel is that like here there's a pedal and it's usually electric. This one you like had to kick your foot and it would spin the wheel at the bottom, which would then spin the little plate at the top. And when I was doing it, I just like kept kicking it. You don't have to kick it that much, but I just kept going.
It's kind of a coordination thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, this is weird. So this man is actually really good. When we were there, he made like these 2 items in like seconds. Yeah, it didn't even take a minute to make both of them. And then I took a long time, and then I felt really bad because when I set mine down, I might have damaged one of the other ones. Nobody noticed, but I was crying inside. So here are some more pictures. These women are painting. I believe they were still like learning when they were doing that. So they were just like practicing and doing a ton. You can see at the bottom there's like a design inside the bowl. And then this man was painting this amazing vase. It was huge and just so detailed. And he will start with painting it in black, and then there was someone sitting over here who would go back and fill it in with color. Here are more pictures. So this is just like just tons of pottery in this hallway. I believe I called it the pot portal. And then this is the huge kiln that Devin is inside.
It's a little scary looking.
Yeah. And then there's more plates and bowls, and they're just like so detailed, and that's just like one of the thousands I'm sure they had there. The next topic is tile, and the tile work in Morocco is called zalij, and it's like an Islamic, it's like an Islamic style of art. And I read that they're so invested in it because it doesn't depict humans or human form, which is like I guess a rule for Islamic art. So the tile, I actually have these little samples to pass around. I know you guys have all seen them, but whoa, sorry. So it's actually created by these square tiles that are painted, and then I have pictures. So these men, they're sitting on the floor. They have these little contraptions built where they can actually chisel away at the tiles to create each individual shape, which is going around. And each shape has to be really specific so it does fit together really well. And after they have all the tiles made, they're put in those little bags and someone will assemble them. And what's really amazing is that they do it face down, so they can't see the color or the pattern. It's all based on memory, and it's just absolutely amazing. So you can barely see, but there is a little guideline on the floor. So this one is about probably halfway done, the one he's doing in the center. And then when they're done assembling it on the floor, they actually put it in like a brace type of thing, like a metal, I guess like form, yeah. And then they'll put concrete on the back to seal it all together. And when they're done, it will look something like this. So this, I know. So this is a table, and it's just like amazing. It's all done at one time. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna just seal this and then go back. Like they do it all at one time, and it's just all based on memory. It's absolutely amazing. If you do, I think we saw a couple tables where there was like one tile maybe that was the wrong color, and it was just like amazing to think out of all that there could be only one mistake. And then in the center, this is a little fireplace thing, and then on both sides there's fountains. And then this was in their showroom. It's a little like banquettes with just tile on the wall and the floor, and it's just absolutely amazing. You can't look too hard because it's just like, oh my gosh, it blows your mind. So leather. This was another adventure we did in the Medina and Fez. So in Fez, in all of Morocco, they have adopted some modern leather dyeing and curing techniques, but in Fez specifically, in this one tannery we went to, they're still using the techniques that they've used for hundreds of years. And since the 11th century, Morocco has been known for its durable and protective leather, shields, and armor, so it's kind of built a reputation as being really high quality and really nice. And the leather dyeing process is very interesting. So the skin is taken directly from like the animal and slaughterhouse, and it's taken to the tannery, and where it's placed in like the white vats, which are these ones. So those are filled with water, limestone, and pigeon droppings, which is what creates that really ripe smell when we were there. So the limestone removes the hair and the wool from the skin, and then the acid and pigeon droppings actually like softens the leather and makes it pliable and easy to sew and make into different products. And then after that, it is soaked in, so it's soaked in that white solution for 3 days, and then it is moved to the colored vats for dyeing. And they use like natural dyes for everything. They call it vegetable dyes. So like red is a poppy flower, blue is indigo, orange is henna, and then yellow is saffron. And then after that, so there's alum stone in the color too, which helps set the dye. And then after that, they are dried on a roof, and then they're sent to artisans who create bags, jackets, and home goods. So these are some pictures from the tannery we went to. This is like on the top level where you can look down and see, this is where we got that picture. So this is just like a very small example of how much stuff is actually there. So these are all little leather poofs, and they're all over the floor. And then the white one, like I said, is what they originally put the leather in, and then they go dye it over there. When we were there weren't any leathers dyeing on the roofs, but you can imagine that they'd just be everywhere. And then this was another floor. You can see like some belts and bags, and that was like one of 3 floors, and they all were just identical, just wall to wall, like just so many things. Yeah, I know. I was like, I bought a coat, and I was just, like I said, at the rug place, I forgot everything. It was kind of a similar situation, so I forgot to take a picture. But the next artisan craft is bronze and silver. So bronze and silver have also been around for a very long time, and it's been used for lamps and trays and teapots. And the quality of bronze can be told by its sound, color, and weight. So a high quality, like real original bronze will be heavier than like a fake bronze plated item. And then also when you strike it, it will kind of like resonate like a gong. And then the color, it will stay shiny and it will stay really nice for a very long time. So like bad ones are just the opposite. So it will be lighter, it will tarnish faster, it's not as sturdy, so it will dent and bend. But it's also cheaper to buy those. So if you're just getting like a little gift, they always recommend you just like get the cheap one. But so those are, the cheaper ones are often found in Medinas, but you can also find really nice ones there too. So also a teapot. It's made with silver, copper, and pewter, and this allows it to be placed in a fire and cleaned easily. They always tell you just to be wary of buying cheap ones because they can contain lead, which is really bad, and then they'll also rust on you. And just like the bronze, it can be told by sound. So he was like flipping the teapot, and like the lid was like slamming against it, and I guess it made a better sound than the bad, cheap teapot. And then you can also scratch it, and it won't scratch. So, so how they make them, this man, he is like a 2nd generation bronze artisan. His dad was like really good. I think he had like pictures with like famous people on the wall. It was just like really impressive. And what they do is they take this little metal piece and they hammer it into the bronze while like twisting it and turning it to create a pattern. And it's all freestyled and totally made up as he goes, but it's all just perfect. And then this one in the middle is a silver platter. Then there's camel bone dyed with saffron into it as well. And then those are just different examples. So that big one in the upper right corner is a cheap plate. You can tell by its color. And then the one just next to it is a really nice one. And then the 2 in the bottom are both camel bone. The white is natural camel bone, and then the other one was dyed with saffron. There's me. Yes, I did this whole thing. No, I was just posing because I did not want to mess that up. That was very precious. So this is the piece that they use to actually make the design. So it's just a flat piece of metal that they just twist and turn. And then these 2 are what would be used for like a cheaper item. It acts as a stamp. So there's just a design, then they just like hammer it in and then just repeat it. That's just a bronze like little shop in a Medina in Chefchaouen. So I didn't actually stop in there, so I couldn't tell you if it's good quality or not, but it was pretty. So scarves are another Moroccan staple. They're not like their obvious uses would obviously be like for warmth, but they're also very popular amongst women just because of the culture. They cover their heads and hair, so there's just a huge variety. Silk, like from silkworms and then cotton, are not native to Morocco, so they kind of use other materials. One of them is cactus silk, which is made from agave cactus. Like the fibers, they take it and then they dye it, and it becomes like a material they can use for scarves. And then they also use velvet and wool. And yeah, so this is a loom. It's kind of hard to see, but this is, yeah, we're all, yeah. So this man is working behind here, and this is just a whole like ream of material. And he's working on one. I think there was like velvet and cactus silk in it. And then that is the agave cactus when it's like dried before they turn it into silk. So all those hanging fibers is what you would use to turn into that, which is really shiny and pretty. Yeah, okay. And then fossils was another one. Oh, I also have these scarves. Do you guys want to see them? Yeah. Okay. So this one was bought at the Scarf Co-op. It's made with agave silk, and you'll notice it's not like silky. It's kind of feels more like chiffon. And then this one I bought on the side of the road. So you can compare them if you'd like. I think they're both pretty nice quality, but I don't know if you just want to look at them. So another really interesting thing, I thought it was interesting just because I didn't realize it was part of like a Moroccan craft until we got there, and I like kept noticing it. And then when we went to this foundry, I was like, oh, so this is the thing here. So it's fossils, and they get them from like the desert and stuff. And we were in, was it Erfoud? Erfoud was where we saw this. And so they make the fossils into tables, sinks, and fountains and bath design, which can mean counters and like different like walls and stuff, and even like floors if you wanted to. So it's Moroccan originated fossils and marble, and the rocks, the slabs of rock are cut and polished into like a shiny surface, and it takes 1 hour just to do 1 centimeter of cutting. And it just like, so the whole process from like the cutting to the polishing to just the sculptural aspect can take a very long time. So this is like a piece of natural fossil, or natural, it's a natural rock slab, but then they like carved around the fossils to make it like more, I don't know. Yeah, like standouty. Thank you. So like they polished the fossils, but they left everything else natural, so you can kind of get a better idea of what it would look like. So this one is actually like a sand formation that has like fossilized. They had these like all, if you look, there was like a wall surrounding it. They were just like lined on top of the entire wall, and it's sitting on top of a big slab. And then that is jellyfish sediment. And we were debating, we thought it was flowers, but it's actually jellyfish. So these are the tentacles, and that would be like the top, and then there's like this long stem. I guess it's like a prehistoric jellyfish. And then over there is just another slab that they threw water on to reveal the texture, and it's squid sediment, which would be like that long conic shape. Also like on the wall, there's that white one. And then I have these, more visuals. This is malachite, this is agate, and then this is squid sediment, all formed into little eggs. And these are also native to Morocco. I got a Berber discount because they thought I looked Berber. And I'm pretty sure that's the end. So, yeah.
All right, so I did Moroccan architecture. First, I'm doing the influences. So there were the Berbers, who were kind of the first people who settled there in 110 BC. And then we have the Islamic influence from the 700s, the Moorish people from Spain in the 800s, and then Jewish people came in the 1400s, and then the French people in the 1900s. So the Berbers, they had large buildings that were made out of mud, bricks, sand. They made with water, and just made these big buildings with long walls and small windows so that you can't really see out very well. People still kind of live in them today, and they're more off the grid, and sometimes they have satellite dishes or stuff, so they still might have Wi-Fi or cable, but they are still like self-sustainable and have their own animals and gardens that they grow food from and everything. There's pretty much the same design elements on every building, so as you can see, like every building kind of looks the same and it's hard to distinct one from another. The Islamic influence, they brought in colorful tiles and the zalij that we talked about, and the geometric designs. They brought in fountains that were in the Medinas and the mosques and the madrasas, which are the schools. This is a picture of a basic riad where there's a courtyard in the center and all of the rooms are built around it so that it's open to sunlight, and then all of the windows on the they don't have any windows facing outside, so you can't see out into the Medina. You can only see into the courtyard area of your own house. And all of the doors to the rooms are also facing towards the middle.
So you can see the light coming in. So
Yeah.
it's open to the sky. Some
Right.
people have that.
Yeah, some have a covered skylight where you can still see the sunlight, but not the sky. Like that was what they had in our homestay. They had just like a white covering where the sunlight could still come through and illuminate everything.
And then I've seen gardens, like right there in the middle of their house,
Yeah.
gardens because the rain comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Or sometimes they'll have fountains too that for water that they put right in the middle.
yeah.
And then in a lot of the riads we stayed in, there would be like a pool right in the middle too. So the Spanish culture.
That's a good way to see kind of how it's open to the sky.
Yeah, that's a good example. They brought in more tiling, but more with a stucco roof, so you can see kind of the green and red tiles on the rooftop. And they also brought in the arches, so like the horseshoe arches that we saw a lot of, and just regular arches. There's just in the windows and the doors, just the basic design of the walls. They typically had white walls, and they brought a lot of gardens. And you can kind of see in the woodwork, there's like calligraphy and designs that they sketched into it, and then in the walls too. So the Jewish architecture, this we more saw in Chef Shawan with like blue just everywhere. That was like the Jewish color, and that was the symbolism with sky and the relation to God. And just everything was blue, and they painted it blue when they came in the 1400s, and they just have kept it like that ever since. The French culture, this we more saw in like Rabat. When they came, they had a lot of restrictive rules for how they would build their places. Like they couldn't be any more than 4 stories high. Like you can see like the cafe in the bottom floor, and then 3 floors above it with housing. And so they could only have 4 floors, and the roofs had to be level, and the balconies could not overlook their neighbors' houses. And they also wanted to make sure that the buildings weren't taking over everything, so they had it to where it was 80% building, 20% gardens. Yeah, and that was more of a modern look that you would see in the modern areas like Rabat and outside of the Medinas.
And then when you went to Paris, you got that little bonus.
Yeah.
You could see sort of the influence of the style that they brought with them.
Definitely, yeah. I didn't add any
Like,
pictures
no
of
high
Paris,
building,
but
yeah.
yeah. I should have done that for comparison, but yeah. And then now there's the different types of architecture. So there's the riads, which I talked about are the houses where people live. And this is, I think this is the hotel that we stayed in Marrakesh. So a traditional Moroccan house is centered around a garden or courtyard, like I said. And riad in Arabic means garden. So that would make sense that there'd be gardens everywhere. They just have trees like growing inside. They're usually 2 or more stories high, and they're built this way for privacy and protection, so you can't see in or out usually. And when we were walking through Medinas, there were just like doors everywhere, but then you go in and it's just like this huge room, like the restaurant we went into in Fez, I think. And like you just wouldn't expect it. There's just this little door, and you walk in and it's just this big room.
And usually down kind of like creepy, crawly, like alleyways.
Yeah, like you wouldn't expect it at all. You're like, where are we going? Palaces, we visited a lot of palaces. This is also in Marrakesh. They are found all over the country, and they definitely have an over-the-top use of space, decoration, and color. So you can see all of the tile work on the floor and the calligraphy on the top of the walls, the high arches, and just beautiful. Really expensive and over-dramatic everything. Then there's the Medina. This is the Medina in Fez that we overlooked. This isn't my picture, but
I was going to say, that's a great picture.
yeah, I liked this picture, and I kind of cropped it a little bit just to see how crowded it is. And like Julie was saying, how they're just really, really tight alleyways. And Radwan actually took us through this really tight one just to like tease us and be like, Sean, can you get through it? Because he didn't want to be there, so he's just taking us to all these different areas and just brought us right back to where we came from after that, just to
Alibaba.
Yeah, Alibaba. So they're maze-like with high walls and small walkways, so you can't see up or around. You can only see the sky, and you can't ever really tell in what direction you were going. Like Sean had a little compass, and every once in a while he'd take it out and be like, what direction do you think we're going? And have all of us guess. And then they're so easy to get lost in too, and they're built in sections, so every once in a while we'd pass a doorway that you can shut off to invaders, and so that they would be stuck in like a little area while everything else would be fine. And then that's a picture of inside of the Medina, the tight walkways, and there's just a lot of shops, and in the Medina people live there, but they also work there, so there's restaurants and hotels and shops everywhere that you can go through. And it's just really tight, and there's like nobody in there, but usually it was always just really crowded, and you just had to like weave your way through everybody and everything. So then there's the mosques, which you can see pretty much at any point while you're in the city. They're the places of worship, so people go there to pray, and they also send out the call to prayer, which you can hear all over the place. They're a bigger building, but they have one specific really tall tower so that you can see it easily. Non-Muslims are not allowed to enter there, so only locals go there. And then there's different entrances for men and women. The madrasas is the Quranic school for children. I tried to find a picture of the one we went to because I didn't upload the pictures onto my computer yet, but this is just another one that I saw that kind of looked similar. There's a lot of Quranic, no, it's just a Google picture, but you can see the calligraphy, you can't see it really, but there's calligraphy in the limestone and in the wood on the top, and the walls are made out of limestone, so they were able to carve that. When they built it, the limestone was wet, so then while it was drying it was like plaster, so you could carve stuff into it all over, and there's just really intricate designs. There's several rooms all throughout it, and it's all centered around the same courtyard with a fountain. And the rooms were used for living quarters for students and teachers, and classrooms, and also spaces for prayer. The fountain in the middle was for like washing and drinking and just anything that you'd need water for. Then the mashrabiyas are screened windows, so that if there are windows to the outside, you can see out of it, but then other people can't see inside, and this is generally for women's privacy. They don't want to be seen, so they can see everything that's happening outside of their window, but you usually can't see in, like for instance here. And then finally I have the horseshoe arch, which is all over the place, like doorways, entrances to places, fountains, just everywhere there's the horseshoe arch. They're even like in little knockers on doors. It's a symbolism for protection against the evil eye, and they don't really believe that as much anymore, but now it's just more of a decorative thing and traditional. So it's actually used more, the Muslims use the design more than any other culture, and it's found all over the place. Yeah, and then that's all I have.
Okay, so my presentation is on French colonization. First, start with some background of how the French got interested in Morocco. So first, in the early 1500s, there was a struggle between the Spanish and the Turks for control over the coastal area of North Africa. Turkish pirates eventually won that struggle and controlled the Barbary coast. And then although the Turks didn't conquer Morocco, they interfered with the affairs of Morocco, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. And then the French turned their attention to Morocco, partly as a response to the piracy, because the Turkish pirates were raiding European towns for the slave trade. So that was part of it, and also part of it because the French had colonized Algeria, and they wanted Morocco to protect their border with Algeria and have access to the sea. So the French agreements with Italy and Spain. European powers decided to split up Northern Africa just to take care of any conflicts that might arise from different people wanting control of the area. In 1900, France and Italy make an agreement. Italy gets Libya, France gets Morocco. In 1902, France and Spain divide up Morocco, with Spain taking a section in the north. 1904, Britain promises not to challenge French control over Morocco, and in return, France doesn't interfere with British control in Egypt. And while these deals are made, Morocco is still considered to be independent, and ruled by the Sultan, even though basically the more powerful European countries were just splitting it up like it's theirs. So the Algeciras Conference, it was an international conference in Spain in 1906, comprised of various European powers and the US to decide what should be done about the first Moroccan crisis of 1905. And so this crisis was a clash between France and Germany. France wanted to set up a protectorate in Morocco, and then Germany challenged their authority by showing support for the Sultan. And then Britain, because they were opposed to Germany, backed the French in this. The conference affirms the independence of the Sultan, but gave control of banks and police to the French. Then we have the Second Moroccan Crisis. In 1911, France sent troops into Fez to help put down a rebellion against the Sultan. And then Germany sent troops under the guise of protecting their interests in the nation, but France and Britain saw it as a challenge to French authority in the area. And then Germany backs down in return for compensation. So the Treaty of Fez, this crisis led to the treaty in 1912, the Treaty of Fez between the French and Moroccan governments. France officially establishes its protectorate, and Morocco legitimizes it with a treaty, basically giving over all the control of Morocco to France. The Sultan didn't really have a choice in this situation, since the French military had helped him put down the rebellion, which I talked about in the previous slide with the second crisis. And then there were two avenues of French control from this point forward. The first being the government occupation, and second being sort of a demographic shift with an influx of French immigrants. So Morocco's push for independence. There was a Berber uprising in the 1920s that lasted for about 5 years. And then in 1944, there was the founding of a new party, the Independence Party, which had support from the Sultan and also from the US government. France didn't want to give up control of Morocco, so they exiled the Sultan and the party leaders of the Independence Party. But then there was a rise in terrorism, so France decided to return the Sultan to his throne, and negotiations for independence took place in the late 1950s, with the French protectorate ending in 1956. So I'm going to shift gears and go into sort of the cultural effects. The French colonization in buildings. The French rejected the Moroccan Medinas. They wanted to live in a place that reminded them of home, so they built their own cities. And this was also part of the reason that the capital of Morocco under French control was changed from Fez to Rabat, because the French found the Medinas and Fez too confusing. So to bring France to Morocco, the French constructed the Ville Nouvelle, European-style suburbs outside the Medina. They also introduced apartments, tall buildings, cafes, and the Art Deco style. An example of this French style can be seen in Ifan, Morocco. It's a city built in the mountains by the French to be a place for Europeans to go, particularly in the hot summer months when places like Marrakesh would be dusty and dry. The Europeans could escape to this place in the mountains. That was cool. The buildings in the European style, and it's known as the Switzerland of Morocco. Next, infrastructure and modern technology. So France brought to Morocco railway systems, roads and grand boulevards, which they of course named after French leaders, airports, French schools, churches and banks, electricity, running water, excavations, including those of the Roman ruins, which we saw at Volubilis, the mining of phosphate, cobalt, and aluminum, which is really important because phosphate mining became a huge part of the Moroccan economy. Other French influences include the work week. So Friday is a holy day in Islam, but because the Europeans worked on Fridays, the Moroccans, instead of taking their holiday off, they also had to work on Friday as well. Some influence with cuisine. France influenced the traditional Moroccan cuisine with fish and lemon chicken, which we ate a lot of. Many cooking classes in Morocco are taught by French chefs instead of Moroccan chefs. Also the introduction of wine. And finally, the French language. So under French rule and control of education, Moroccan students were taught the French language. And even though French is technically a foreign language in Morocco, the official language is considered Arabic, but it's still used for government documents, business, and we saw a lot of advertising there that was in French. The French language sort of became a status symbol. Ability to speak the language denotes education and a high socioeconomic class. Middle-class parents spoke to their children in French so that they'll seem more like the upper class. And many people became more proud to speak French than their own native Moroccan Arabic because they thought it made them look rich or whatever. Oh. Hold on. Should have another slide. Okay. I don't know what happened to my last slide, but basically, the French language is kind of a big deal because it represents the continuation of the French colonization. So even though in the 50s there was no longer the military occupation in Morocco, they still had the French language permeating the country and their culture in sort of a cultural colonization. So that's it.
Okay, perfect. So my topic is the symbolism of the various colors amongst different Moroccan cities. Again, the quote. Islam does not use images of people or animals in decoration. Color symbols and scripts set the mood, and there are colors for all of the emotions. And that's, I guess, more so for the art of Morocco, but it does kind of incorporate in within the cities as well. So it starts with Chefchaouen, the little blue city in the mountains. I took that picture myself. So, Muslim and Jewish refugees built the whitewashed houses with tiny balconies, tiled roofs, and patios that gave the town the kind of Spanish feel. I know someone talked about the tiled roofs, how they're flat. It's like a Spanish influence, so you can see that within the picture. Chefchaouen was originally painted a traditional Muslim green, but as you can see, it's obviously blue now. And that was introduced in the 1930s. So I kind of wondered myself while I was there, like, why is it blue? It's obviously very blue. The first reason was to follow Jewish customs and culture. In Jewish beliefs, the color blue represents the sky, reminding people of heaven and God. Many locals say that like blue-colored walls of Chefchaouen were only within like the Jewish part of the city until fairly recently. Another reason is to deter mosquitoes, which I thought was kind of weird because mosquitoes are by water and water is blue. Like, that doesn't make sense. But Apparently mosquitoes like to live near water, not on water, so because the city is blue, it won't land on the city, but rather like around it. Another reason was to keep the city cool. Although this wasn't the original intention, because it's blue, it kind of keeps it cool. I know I have a brick house and like all the heat gets trapped inside of it. So because the city's blue, it kind of like prevents it to settle. Another reason is to represent the color of water, which again is kind of like the Muslim influence in there. It's either blue because of the Mediterranean Sea, or the importance of what we saw, the waterfall where the citizens all wash their laundry or get their drinking water. Another reason is to attract tourists. It kind of looks attractive and has a calming effect. I kind of thought this was funny. I saw in one of my research that Chef Challen is like where a lot of people get most of their keef. And so not only does that keep the city kind of cool and calm, but also the blue city also helps them keep in a good mood, I guess.
For most of you don't know what keef is the marijuana.
Okay.
It's said to be the color of happiness and optimism. Locals might add that this is just because some areas are blue, other people started painting their houses blue, just peer pressure, I guess, I don't know. Fez, I didn't really know, I know that you spelled it F-E-S, but I spelled it F-E-S, I hope that's okay. I didn't know. Okay. It's the cultural and spiritual capital of Morocco. The blue is technically the color of Fez, which is famous for its pottery, like we saw when we went to the pottery shop. It's painted with the elegant cobalt blue. I thought what was interesting about that was how the fact that they painted it with purple and then you painted over it and then it turned the cobalt. And so I actually bought a $50 bowl, which was worth my money, even though I haven't set it out yet, it's in my closet. But on the bottom actually it says Fez blue, so it's known for that, that royal blue look. However, it's the color green that is most apparent within the city. You can kind of see it. My lens doesn't go in too far, but you can see how there's kind of green roofs over there. It has like an olive green tone to it. This is just green because it has a lot of traditional, there's a lot of traditional meanings in Islam for the green. The Moroccan flag includes the same green, like that star, for the same reasons. So what is it? You can kind of see in this picture a lot of the greens, but also that roof is that Islam green. Its color most associated with Islam's religion because it had just represented Islam for centuries. Some believe that green was Prophet Muhammad's favorite color, so that could be another reason. It's also mentioned in a number of verses of the Quran as it's a color that will be worn by everyone in paradise. I saw another few quotes that said that green is the color of paradise, like the lush trees and all those greens within paradise, and that's why you'll be wearing it too. So I just know that green is the main color, but we also saw like a lot of gold. That's another color with Islam. Also red, like the flag in Morocco, and also like whites and blacks as well. This was another city we stopped at. I'm not sure how to spell it, but it was the town and valley of the roses. It's home to the country's largest rose and oil manufacturers. It's used for fragrances, beauty products, and traditional cuisine in Morocco. I know that a lot of us bought like the rose spray or the lotions that we saw there that we stopped at. It's believed that pilgrims who settled in Morocco brought those roses to the city when they settled, whether or not it's the petals or the seeds itself. It just kind of spread within the city and continues to play a role. And the city is best known for the Festival of Roses. So this would be the city of pink, like the pink influences. So what is the Festival of Roses? It celebrates the rose petal harvest in early May of each year, which we kind of stopped by that same time that we stopped. It was within that week. And that's why Radwan was able to buy like the heart-shaped roses, because it's kind of a celebration, something that you can carry around or hang up to show that it's that time of harvest. So up to 4,000 tons of rose petals are harvested annually from the 2,600 miles of rose bushes. Celebrations include traditional Berber food, music, dancing, as well as a parade of the Rose Harvest Queen. And the parade has brightly colored floats covered in paper roses. The festival influences the city all year round. We can see there was kind of like a pink tone to the town as we drove by. And also you can see their taxis are painted pink as well. So kind of cheesy, but it is nice. Oh, and this was the lotion that I bought from the town, just to show you how like everything there is a lot of Rose products.
Are the taxis like this for the harvest or year-round?
All year round. I believe so, from what I found in my research. Yeah.
Barbie pink.
Yes, exactly. Marrakesh is the red city of Morocco. I also found that some people called it the pink city, but yeah, but because I had like the rose city as the pink city, I figured that I'll just go with red here.
Everybody else in the world.
Right. Did.
The reason why it can be considered the pink city is because the walls kind of have like a salmon pink to it, but depending on the lighting and the time of day, you can see over there, it kind of has like a red feel to it. So that's why people also call it the red city. Between 1130 and 1269, there was a type of group that controlled the area known as Marrakesh now, and they just used the earth's red clay to mold the buildings and the walls. So there's no really symbolism here besides the fact that they just used red, and so now it's the red city.
Well, it was natural to that area.
Yeah, exactly. The clay was naturally red. They didn't dye it or anything, so it just turned red. And there's my works cited.
All right, so I focused on families and kind of like the structure of the homes and the relationships. Kind of has a lot involved, but I'm just going to start with a little background of the different classes. So there's the lower class. They typically live in informal homes or slums, and we saw a lot of this in Casablanca when we were driving to Rabat, and we got to see the comparison between the little slums, and then they were also building a lot of new apartments to help make it look nicer. About 5.6% of the population live in slums or informal homes, and although they do not have a lot, we saw in the video that they're still really grateful for what they do have. And it's normal to see multiple families in one home.
The documentary kind of showed that as well.
And then the middle class, they typically live in a dar, which has several different floors. About 65.9% of the population lives here. And a lot of the middle class will speak French and teach French to their children to try to look like the upper class. Typical jobs for middle class citizens are teacher or police officer. And again, several families typically live in a dar together. And then there's the upper class. They mostly live in villas. We saw this with Julila in Marrakesh, her beautiful house. This is about 4.8% of the population, and typical jobs are university teachers or public or private doctor, and it's typically just one family per villa. So then some other housing, we saw riads, and we stayed in them in the Medinas. It's about 4.9% of the population, and it's one large home with an open courtyard, or some, I know our homestay had the covering above the courtyard. And then there's also apartments, and about 20.2% of the population live in apartments. And there's three types: social for the poor, lower class, middle for the middle class, and then high standing for those with better incomes. And then just some random housing statistics. 91.9% of houses have electricity, 72.9% have running water, and 40% have modern showers.
I just have a question. How do you get 91.9% and then like 40%? How come?
Radwan.
I
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering this too, but
Okay.
yeah.
It's very specific.
Yes, he spits out some interesting things. And then a little bit of the schooling. A lot of it has to do with your economic standing, and students will typically focus in school, like high school, and then into their college, what they're gonna do for their career. And it's not very common to see students have a job and go to school, because you kind of have to choose one or the other. So there's a public school, which is free to anybody, and it's a lower quality education, and it's majority lower class and some middle class. And then there's private, which costs anywhere from $150 to $300 for each child per month, but it's a higher quality education, but it's mostly middle class and upper class. And then there's international, which can cost around $700 each month per child, but it can always vary. And then it's majority upper class, and attending university is becoming more popular for women, especially because there's a want to be educated.
The school that I taught in would have been that, where it was the American school. It was a private school, mostly the embassies, and very costly. I don't know what the tuition was, but it was a really costly program. So we had a lot of the elite Moroccans and then all of the, the 40 nationalities of embassies. So it was a really beautiful campus. So I was not in the mixes, of the real people in the sense. I was working in a school that was really she.
And then just a little bit comparing men and women. Men typically make the income and they have the job, even if there's several different families living in the home. There can be one man supporting all like 10 or 12 people. And typically when a man marries, the wife comes and lives with his family. And then women generally stay at home and care for the children in the home. They make all the meals and clean. And if they do earn any money or have an income, they're not obligated to share it. And then they move to the husband's family typically. So a general home structure is, again, the men typically make the income and they support all the people living there. And then the women stay home, and all the children, it's considered rude, like if you want to move away just to get your own apartment or whatever, like we do here. So all the children, unless they're moving away for a job or school, they live at home until they are married. Just a little bit about our homestay experience. On the far, that is our homestay mom, and then the middle picture is our banquettes where we slept. They fit most of the traditions. They treated us like guests. They didn't really sit down and have the meal with us like we would typically do here, which was kind of strange and weird to get used to. And then we saw Dries was her son, and he lived there with his wife and kids, and they were in the upper balcony. We could hear them running around. And then our host mom was cooking and serving us as well as her family, so it was still traditional while she was serving our guests, but she still was doing her everyday job of serving her family. Traditional women typically wear a jalaba, which Devin is wearing, and the hijab, which is a scarf. And they typically stick to traditional meals with the tagine, couscous, and barbecue, and it's normal to have 4 to 5 kids or more. And on a more modern point of view, women are more educated and choose not to wear the jalaba or the hijab, although some are more modern and educated while still wearing the traditional dress. And the women that choose not to, they still will sometimes for like national and religious holidays. And the cuisine sort of for modern families is more internationally influenced, so they don't stick to just the traditional tagine and couscous. And they are having less and less kids due to economic reasons.
And then Radwan lived in an apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and then his wife, when he married, they live in an apartment rather than with his family.
Right,
So
yeah.
they do it a little more modern.
Yeah. He was saying that he likes the modern kind of like lifestyle sort of, but he still wants the traditional. Yeah. So when it comes to meeting each other, traditionally the mother of the son is in charge of finding a wife. So she will go out to the hammam or just like out shopping and choose a wife that he or that she thinks fits his son. And love is not a priority, but is said to develop throughout the marriage. It's more so just getting married to be married, because otherwise you're shaming the family, especially if daughters don't get married. And traditionally it's considered taboo if the son or daughter is in a relationship and dating, but it was not arranged by the family. And more modern point of view, the family is just said to bless the relationship in the family or in the marriage. couples find each other and decide they want to date and get married, which is kind of what Radwan did. He saw his wife and then pursued her, even though it took a while. And love and understanding of each other is part of the process. It's kind of how we are here. Appearance and family social rank is like a motivator to get married. But Radwan specifically said that he was still looking for somebody to stay at home and care for the children in the home, so that kind of ties back into the traditional way of life.
Who asked Radwan if he loved his wife? Who was it?
I think we all,
Was it all-
yeah,
it was a few of us.
yeah. It was just kind of
And then
strange.
you were surprised. What did, share what you learned.
He just wasn't, he didn't seem very like sure that, like he wouldn't come out and say that, yes, I love my wife. It was kind of like, yeah, like we're married, that's just what you do.
Yeah, he was working on it.
Yeah,
So that's where you,
Yeah.
you grow, so it's not
Mhm.
necessarily, he got to a certain age,
hmm
and that is, what, you know, so kind of, but he wanted somebody that he, you know, could
Yeah.
settle down with and have a family, and that whole idea of marrying your best friend is not necessarily a part of that culture. That doesn't mean that that married person can't become your best
Mhm.
friend, you know, that, but that's not the focus where you're marrying your best friend. Your friends are outside of that relationship. Yeah,
Mhm.
so that was, I remember having that conversation and that being kind of a surprise to.
Definitely. So when it comes to the ceremony, the man typically pays for everything, like the venue, musician, organizer, and the food and the rings, and the women are basically just left to rent or buy the dress. And in Radwan's experience, she invited way more people than he was to the wedding, so she paid the extra amount for the food that would be going to the extra people that she invited. And then during the marriage, again, it's just kind of like the men are making the income and the women stay at home. And this picture is in Marrakesh, and it's two women with like two children, and they're toting their groceries behind them on a little moped.
Oh, right.
And
Remember that.
it's just strange seeing, I mean, here,
The little one in front,
yeah.
the one hanging on behind, and then there was a grocery bag. If you all can see that, I remember because we
Yeah.
were sitting next to each other
Yeah.
then. And there's one of those grocery carts rolling behind the moped.
but that's just normal to them. Like, they have to do what they have to do. They just find a way to do it. And it's typical to have your first child within the first year of being married. And then divorce has been increasing recently. And when you take it to court, if both parties are agreeing to get the divorce, it can go pretty quickly in a few short months. But if only one person wants the divorce, the judge will typically send you away several different times and tell you to try and work it out and not get the divorce if you don't have to. In divorces, women have priority to the children, and so the father will have to pay child support. And some remarry, but not all. And that's everything.
Right, so I'm doing how like a person chooses their place in society. I've been like very fascinated with that as I try to figure out what I'm gonna do with my life, and just like the limitations and aspects of like what goes into like making those kinds of decisions. So like in Morocco, education is still believed to be like, you know, the key that relinquishes you from the chains of poverty. And so in Moroccan society, you have a preschool education that is, like not mandatory, but suggested. There's two types typically, either at like the Quranic schools that we saw, or parents could pay for like the private kindergarten type, in which case you'd be focusing on literary and mathematics to help you in primary school. And primary school is required as like a fundamental human right given to everyone in Morocco based upon the Constitution. And it's compulsory for children from the age of 6 to 12. Let's see. After you decide you want to go to secondary school, you'll take a test to get into pretty much middle school or high school, and you'll attend secondary school from the age of 12 to 15. And this is like where you'd start to like decide which path already, like where you would want to go. So are you thinking more of humanities? Are you thinking more of being a scientist or a mathematician? You'll end up being, or are you going to be vocational? And so you'll break yourself into two different paths, one of them being the baccalaureate path and the other being vocational school. So if you decide to go with the baccalaureate path, you're looking at three main types, one being like humanities or business. The most preferred is science, which covers a vast array of topics, and the final one being mathematics. You can, if you're like, most people prefer to do the scientific path because they feel that it gives you more opportunities, it has access to the higher paid jobs, everything else. But for those who don't necessarily feel that college is for them, as we mentioned before, there's like a big artesian movement and other things like that. A lot of people focus on vocational school. And with the current economic climate being what it is, the king has really pushed a lot of like referendums trying to really pursue vocational school and giving people a skilled trade and a decent paying job that they can pursue versus just being uneducated and trying to work. So after you would go to vocational school, or after you pass the BAC, you would have the option for a university. I should say, the BAC is a hard test that you'd take. So after secondary school, if you decide to go with the BAC path, you would have 3 years of education, and then you'd have 2 tests each year, and that would consist of the BAC, and then your score is averaged based upon whether or not is averaged based on the further years being worth more. It's like a really hard test, and you have to essentially get a 10 to pass. And so I found this like great scale. So the grading system is from 0 to 20, but 20 is like close to godliness. So almost nobody gets 20. And so I thought that was interesting though, because like here in America, like at least I like strive for an A, like that's all I want. And then to be told that I can't be perfect, that you can't have that, but don't say that. So it's interesting just to see that like culturally that's different.
So I would point out that the BAC means baccalaureate.
Yeah.
And we have now here international baccalaureate programs. I think City High and East Grand Rapids High has the international baccalaureate program that fits then this mode. So if you get the international baccalaureate, you are passing this BAC, this exam that covers everything that you have studied your entire high school career. And if you don't pass that, you don't get your diploma from your high school diploma. So not only do you not go to college or university, you don't get your high school diploma. So it's a little different like than the SAT or the ACT, because those are just kind of college entrance exams. But the baccalaureate is your end of high school exam, which is so important because it determines whether or not you will get that diploma.
And so like it really is like really important now that we have like vocational schools where it's like you're not just like out of luck. Like here you still have an option to like pursue a fulfilling career, whereas if you had you didn't get the BAC, you didn't have that option, you're just like out of luck. You're just someone who didn't graduate high school.
No GEDs,
yeah.
no.
And there's really only like one shot. Like you can take the BAC years over again, but like if you left that part of your life, there's no real starting over. There's no going back.
Is it just similar to the ACT though?
No.
Is it like harder?
It'd be like your final exams of like, well, like in the essence of like it being a test, it's like kind of like the ACT, where it's like a wide range of subjects, but instead of the ACT being just like one day, this is like a week-long examination in which you have to do oral speaking, auditory. There's a lot that goes into it.
And you will not get your high school diploma. So the ACT does not determine whether or not you finish high school.
Yeah, I just didn't know if in like a testing sense or not.
It covers everything.
So, that being said, like only 60% do pass, the first time around. So you can take it, you'd be taking a whole year again, that whole third year of your high school again if you don't pass.
Right, you don't just get to take the test again, you have to do the whole year over.
Yeah, but so let's say that you're smart and you do pass. Back here. You have the option to go to university. And so like university is free to those who have passed the BAC, but there's only 14 of them scattered around the country that are these public free universities. And the people of Morocco really only feel that they're worthwhile if you're actually going into like engineering or medicine or things like that. And then you still have to take an entrance exam to get into these universities. So your place isn't necessarily guaranteed where it is in like other countries that have the same free education system because there is so few of them. So the alternative, there are private universities which are viewed to have a lot more clout, a lot more weight for if you wanted to take like something other than like you wanted to take study humanities or language or something else. But if you were to try to take that same class same course at the public university, they're considered worthless. Like the public universities don't really teach you any life skills that the private sector really feels is beneficial. So you go through all that school year, all that schooling, everything else, just to wind up without a job and not really having a leg up over everyone else, even though you have a degree. So that being said, like private universities are the favorable alternative, but and one of the reasons that your degree doesn't really have a whole lot of effect either is there's a really high unemployment rate. Unemployment is for youth over 30+%, and like these are the unofficial statistics because we've been told that the official statistics are a little lower to make the country look a little better. And that the population unemployment is 16+%, and the statistics most likely don't count women into that factor. So you can imagine like going to school trying to pursue your dream, and then like no matter what, you could be the best student, but if there's no jobs there, you're still out of luck. You're still getting crushed. So as a result of that, like there's many students who just attend the public universities looking for a job. So like if you were going in for a not STEM class, you would just be applying, you'd just be waiting to get a job as a police officer or work in the military as a teacher. You wouldn't really be trying to actually fill the career of your dreams. It's not like when you were a kid, they're like, well, like what do you want to grow up to be? That's no longer necessarily what you're trying to do. You're really just trying to survive, maybe provide for your family, just get out and make money. So
Become a lowly teacher.
Yeah, low lives. And so, like if you're going to go to a public university, it's you say you want to become an engineer or scientist, then public university isn't necessarily a bad thing, but private university is still viewed as like the next level. It's something that's really going to put you ahead in a job interview and and other things. But it comes with a cost. Private universities cost anywhere from $150 a month to $700 a month. And then you have to factor in the average wage for a Moroccan is around $400 to $500 a month. And so if you want like a contrast, say you wanted to live in Morocco, with our Western niceties and everything else, it'd be around $600 a month. You have an apartment with a shower, electricity, high-speed internet. So like to then try to justify paying for college is pretty hard, and especially if you're trying to come from maybe a lower class family, and maybe if you had people counting on you to bring in money, it would just not even be an option. You just have to find a job, you have to work, and you wouldn't really get that chance to do what you want. So as a result, many people don't like their jobs. And Radwan had mentioned that he believes that it's like a large reason why you'll see people, there's a lot of corruption and other things, there's just a high amount of dissatisfaction and like where you are in society and everything else. It doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot of way to like get up and move yourself up without, with great ease like there might be here.
He was very fortunate.
Yeah, he said, Radwan, like our tour guide, he went to school, I think at public university, and he's had to take all these tests. He has a master's degree or equivalent of it, and it seems kind of ridiculous to us to be a tour guide. Like you need like a master's degree, and but to him it's like a very lucrative job, and he really loves it. And so
you could see his knowledge.
Right.
You could see,
There's like the fact that
knowledge that was, he's like he was so knowledgeable about every little thing that you could not just,
So yeah, the fact that in our last presentation where they're like, oh, 90.9%, 91.9% of people have electricity. It's like he probably actually knows that percentage down to. So I thought that was like pretty interesting that very few people feel like they really get love to go to work every day. So I want to make a French comparison. So like Morocco has like the French education system, and so like they have the bac as France does, and the big difference I would say is maybe France has like more developed senses of the bac. Now there's like more technical things that will give you that like certificate of like higher learning, a degree where it's not just like these 3 paths or nothing or vocational. Now it's you can have the bac and you could be a mechanic, or you can have the bac and you could be a hotel's concierge. I can't say a word. Concierge. And there's a lot more development with that vocational school. And I think that is something that Morocco is eventually trying to get, especially because they have such a high amount of youth who are unemployed, and they also have like the majority of their population is going to be people in our age range. They're going to be youth, and there's not going to be any jobs for them. So without these technical schools, technical skills, it could devastate the economy. So in France, though, they also have public and private universities. Public being the free, and if you pass the bac, you have your place guaranteed. But you can then try to go to better universities called Grand Écoles, and these are like the Ivy League schools. And so only about 5% of people attend them. Typically you get a stipend if you got into them. It'd be, it's like what really makes you into like the upper class, gives you like a really good start. That being said, they're extremely difficult to get into, and but many people still try. They'll go to school after you get the bac, they'll go to school for 2 years to these post-bac academies to like pretty much just study for these entrance exams to try to get into these better schools. They feel that it'll give them, that leg up, the different life. That being said, I feel like France still gives you a more even playing field in the fact that you can have this education and upper level of, or upper echelon of reward for the amount of work that you put in. The bac is something that gives you status above everyone else that doesn't have one, just like our high school diploma would. But it also, now everyone has one, so now the university is also the next step, and the fact that it's free really says something. That being said, university is extremely difficult. So like having a university degree is also like rewarded. If you, I think it's 50% of students flunk out their first year of university. So you really have to like make a big effort, like where here in America, like maybe socializing is the main reason we go to college. There, it's really your studies, and you only, it's not like a social faux pas to retake a year, but they're trying to limit, because your school is free, they're trying to limit how many years you can take your classes again. And like,
leaves you out.
Yeah.
There's no hand holding. It's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to navigate on your own. There's nobody like, go and see the counselor, and then they'll hold your hand and kind of, make sure you're getting in the right classes, and make sure you get this, and make sure you have the right number of classes. You got to figure that all out, and then, so there's a lot of weeding out. You've got to kind of maintain.
So I'd say like the biggest difference between, for France and Moroccans, like educational society and how it like leads you into becoming like a person who decides your career, is that you have to really be like a long-term planner at such a young age. And like contrast to the United States, we all pretty much take the same classes in high school. Maybe somebody takes a couple more years of math, maybe some, but for the most part, we're all dictated to take the same things. We all go to the same pretty much high school. And for the most part, you then have an equal playing field in getting to university based upon what grades you get. What I found the biggest difference, though, is that university here has a cost, a giant cost associated with it. $8,000 is the average for a public university, and $20,000 for a private. That being said, there's like to go to a public versus private isn't necessarily a giant stigma like it might be in Morocco or in France with the Grande École. But the other part that's different about our culture is the fact that you can start over. You can go to a different school, you can maybe change careers later in life, and that's almost unheard of in the other two cultures. If you're Morocco, say you're a teacher, but you're like really good at fixing cars, you could never get a job fixing cars. You're a teacher, but like it's not done. It's not a thing. Whereas here, so say you like really enjoyed it, and you're like, no, maybe I'm gonna retire from teaching and like open a shop. Like that'll be my thing. Like that's completely encouraged. It's find your passion and do it, and that's not necessarily the case in other cultures. So.
So I'm doing the religions in Morocco. There's the three main is Jewish, Christian, and Islam. Obviously, Islam. But I'm going to go over like the history of them and how they influenced Morocco. So first was Judaism. It arrived with the Phoenician traders hundreds of years before the Christians did. And they coexisted peacefully with the Berber people that were there. And even the Berbers took some of the Jewish practices and customs of the faith and incorporated it into theirs and like tolerated each other very well. And then the 12th century, there was a doctrine implemented that didn't protect the Jews. And so they were persecuted. A lot of them like left and their houses were destroyed. And so, yeah. And so a lot of the Jews that did stay, they hid their faith. And then in the mid-13th century, the Berber mountain people, who were the ones persecuting the Jews, were overthrown, and the new leaders gave preferential treatment to the Jews, which didn't go well with the natives because they wanted it their way, and the fact that these foreigners who had come in got treatment was not fair to them. And then around 1438, they could no longer protect the Jews in urban areas, and so the leader at the time wanted to protect them and created the first Jewish quarters in Morocco. And a lot of things that we saw there, Radwan, we'd be walking by and you'd be like, oh, this is the Jewish quarter, and like this is the Muslim. So they're all segregated into their area, but it was for their own protection, but also to just keep the faiths a little separate, where like they'd worship next to each other, but they wouldn't like, intermingle as much back then. And then in 1864, there was a royal decree stating that Jews would be treated as equals, and so that it is now a crime to persecute someone of a different faith. And then 1948, there was the creation of the State of Israel, which created the Israel-Arab conflict, and there was a lot of political tension and military conflicts between Arab nations and the State of Israel. And so in 1948 through 1956, 90% of the Jewish population in Morocco left the country, the poor of which went to Israel and the richer left for Canada. And now less than 7,000 Jews are in Morocco, and they're mostly in Casablanca and Rabat. And then there's Christianity, which came in the 2nd century with the Romans who adopted Christianity and brought it in, Christianized the nation. And then later, the French came in, the French protectorate, who to protect them, you know. And most of them were European Christians, and even at one point, 50% of the population in Casablanca were Jewish, or were Christian. So, and in the 1930s, it was considered the time of the Christians by the Arab people. And the Christian Europeans established authority in all spheres of Moroccan life except the faith. They, you know, took over the banks and, you know, the new cities that we talked about earlier. And now, that's worded wrong, but about 1% of Morocco is Christian. And they're mostly in Casablanca, Rabat, and Tangier. And then Islam, obviously the biggest of the three. In 632 AD was the death of Muhammad, which caused the spread of Islam throughout the Middle East and North Africa. And in the 17th century were when the Arab armies arrived in Morocco, and when they came, the Berber people decided to, like as they did with the Jewish previously, adopt some of the customs and eventually just convert over to Islam. And in 788 AD, Idris I founded the first Islamic dynasty in Morocco, and from there, all over the country, they started making more dynasties until now, where Islam is the official religion, and the entire government is mostly surrounded by Islamic faith, and the royal family currently is believed to be a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad itself. And then these various religions all brought in their own influences to it. So there's architecture, as we saw that they have the Medinas were the courtyards in the middle. The Jewish brought it so that they have them on the outside. You have the terrace / the balcony, so that you could look at everybody else and they could see you, whereas Islam, they didn't do that as much. And then there's the Moroccan flag. It was originally the 6-pointed Star of David, and then with the coming of Islam, changed to the 5-star for the 5 pillars of the Islamic faith. And then there are fig trees, which were also from the Jewish, because they wanted to drink. And since Muslims don't drink, they had fig trees so that they could ferment them into alcohol. There are still Jewish synagogues and cemeteries there to this day, and even the country helped restore a Jewish cemetery, which shows the tolerance that they have towards other faiths. And a famous rabbi from Canada and his family actually recently moved to Morocco, so that caused, how do I say this? More tolerance within the community, and shows that he's not afraid to move here because of his faith, and that they're welcome to accept him in their country. And there's even the Jewish Museum in Casablanca. And I can't remember what spices they were, but the Jewish brought spices into the food, which helps, how you got some of our cuisine and how they taste. And Catholic and Christian church is obviously there. And the main point of why these two religions are still very tolerated in there is because they're considered the religions of the book. They're the monotheistic religions, because Muslims don't believe in religions that have multiple gods or no God at all. And so the fact that there's one true God is why they accept this. And then the flag. and your terraces on the outside. And then I took a picture when we were in Marrakesh, but it wouldn't load. And it was a old Jewish synagogue, and like at the top had like the Star of David like all encrusted into here. It was not used for that anymore, but they still have it there, and it's used for other purposes. So I thought that was very cool. And the fact that when the Jewish left, when the state of Israel was created and all that, a lot of them left their homes and kept them there and like didn't sell them or didn't do anything with them, and the country still protects them and doesn't use them and hasn't, like in America, we just take it over and build something new and do whatever we want with it. They're still there, and like they're there for them to come back to if they want them. Yeah, so Morocco is accepting of all faiths. They respect each other's religious practices and places of worship. I know Radwan said that in the Quran, you're not to destroy like a religious center or religious, place or anything like that. So that's a lot of the acceptance. You can pray right next to each other, and they're all perfectly okay with it. And then they have a special respect for the Jewish because they have the longest history there. And as we saw, like Chef Shawan, that's where you get the blue from. And it's just, a lot of respect for the Jewish. And the people of the book are the 3 monotheistic religions. And there is a law, though, that you can't attempt to convert a Muslim, because as a Muslim, they consider you born Muslim, and that it is very shameful to denounce your faith. And so it's actually illegal to try to convert someone to a different religion.
So if you marry, if there's an interfaith marriage, usually the other person converts to Islam.
Yeah.
So if you have met a Moroccan man or woman, you would convert to Islam in order to be in that relationship.
Exactly. Yep. And that's all I have.
I would like you, as you were doing this topic, it came out of your world religions class. You can you just share a little bit of like this, you shared with me in our class last week kind of what happened at the end of this experience as you were kind of exploring these areas that you were really interested in. It sort of made you made some decisions.
Oh, yeah. I was very I took this trip because I was like, okay, I'm going to be done with CC this summer. Like that was my goal, just to get it over with. And I was actually going to stop going to school because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to spend money when I don't waste money. And going on this kind of solidified the fact that I want to keep going in school and that I want to major in religious studies. So it's very interesting to me, and to see that these faiths are so close and so intertwined, and they still coexist peacefully, and they make it work, and they respect each other for it. I really like it.
That's cool. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's just so exciting. I had to have you say that on the record.
On the record.